Hello, friends. Hello. Welcome on in. It is so lovely to be here. I hope y'all are having a wonderful day. Thank you all for being patient. We had a guest who had a little bit of a situation. They were trying to travel back home to get to the show, and there was an accident. They are totally fine, but I appreciate everybody's patience and everybody coming to hang out. Happy International Non-Binary Peoples Day. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. If anybody is new here, my name is Bee. I use they, them pronouns. I am a current It Gets Better ambassador. And today we have a very special stream. We are going to bring on 3 other wonderful gender non-conforming panelists to talk about their experiences with identifying as non-binary or gender non-conforming, whatever terms that they personally use. We'll talk a little bit more a little bit later about labels and everything like that, but for the purpose of simplicity, I'm going to say non-binary or gender non-conforming in these phrases as I'm telling you all about our day and asking questions and whatnot, which I also told all of our guests. So I'm super excited. Let me go ahead and let them know. See if they're ready to be perceived. I always like to give people a little warning just in case. Do you have any other non-binary pals in the chat today? Even if you have some cute non-binary emotes, feel free to throw those in chat at all today to support our wonderful panelists. I'm sure they're a little bit nervous, so none of them are It Gets Better people yet themselves, so it's their first time on the channel, so try to give them a nice warm welcome. Thank you, Elle. Also, we will be balancing audios with all of the guests and the music, so if at any point anything feels off, if any guests are too loud or not loud enough or anything like that, please do let me know, and I will do my best to fix it and make sure that it is nice and sensory friendly for y'all. Alright, rad. They are ready to go, so let me go ahead and undeafen. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
I'm gonna introduce myself a little bit more and then go around and introduce each of our wonderful guests before we get into some questions today. So if you don't know me, like I said, my name is Bee. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as queer, disabled, neurodivergent, and here in the Twitch sphere, I am a variety content creator, and I try my best to create sensory-friendly content, is one of the focuses that I have, because personally I find some Twitch streams to be really sensory overwhelming for me personally, and so I focus on that. I also try to focus on just creating a very community-centered, advocacy-centered sort of space. So that's what I get up to on the interwebs. I also have 3 absolutely wonderful humans with me here today. So I will introduce each of them. So I've got T, also known as Tiona Wrights, or you may have known them as T Spoonie for a long time. They recently just did a little rebrand, which we love to see. T is a cozy variety broadcaster who focuses on making space for being neurodivergent in their content. They love plants, space, and skincare, and outside of content, they work as a freelance writer and spend lots of their free time training their service his dog Biscuit, who I'm sure at some point will try to make his presence known in the stream. He likes to show that stream it's his stream now. So we also have the wonderful Lunix, who is a cozy variety streamer who focuses on story-based and indie games, alongside abolitionist and advocacy conversations. They love historical fiction and binge-watching shows they never finish. And outside of content, they are a second-year graduate student studying teaching English, which is super rad. They're on vacation right now, though, so we get to steal them. It is super early for them, though, so everybody show Lunix some love for getting up at 8:30 in the morning to do a show with us. And last but certainly not least, we have E-Bug, who is a queer and autistic variety broadcaster who describes themselves as soft and silly. They love The Sims 4, stationery, fantasy books, and playing with their new Switch that they got for their birthday. They currently work at a bakery, but hope one day to be an elementary school librarian. So, a day full of absolutely wonderful humans. I'm excited to... Like, obviously, all of us have known each other for a while, but these types of questions, like, you don't just, like, call someone up on a Thursday and be like, hey, so, like, what about your gender identity, though? Can you tell me a little bit more? So I'm excited to have this kind of curated, shared space to talk a little bit more about gender and all of those things. So, thank you all for being here today. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just so you know, you could call me up on a Thursday and be like, "Hey, tell me about your gender," and I'm like, "Well, I'm glad you asked. Let's talk about it."
Will do for sure. What that gender do? Oh, we do a cute little check-in on stream sometimes. It's what is your gender of the day? Wrong answers only. So it can be like accurate to you, but the vibes are like, you know, it wouldn't make sense to a cis person, right? They're like, how's your gender, little dude on a mushroom? And I'm like, I don't know. It just is, okay? I don't have the answers. And chat has come up with the most absolutely ridiculous answers, but I absolutely love it. Like, yesterday someone said that their gender was the DVD bouncing screen from, like, the 90s, 2000s. So... yeah, that's the vibe. Okay, cool. So we're gonna get into it today. Also, chat, if at any point any of you have any questions, please let me know. Chat's already talking about cheese.
He did indeed do a naughty. He did do a naughty.
She's being spicy. I missed it. What's he up to? Little chaos cat.
He was on my altar because he's trying to get the candy, and I'm like, the candy is not for you. It's for my grandma. You can't have that. You're not even supposed to eat peppermints.
Oh boy. My gender is AOL screeching. Anemic, please. I'm crying. I don't know what my gender of the day is. Something good though.
I'm currently the old dial-up sound from computers. That's like I think today's gender is where I'm lying right there. Just screeching.
Screeching. Everybody's feeling the screech.
I think I have my gender identity. It's right here.
Oh, I love him.
Yes.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Love that.
Yes.
Little
Little adventurer. Oh,
That's literally you. Like, I've never seen a better representation. Actually, I take it back. You've had several good representations, but that one has been added to the list.
That's up the top tier.
Have any of y'all played Fortnite in, like, more recently? Because there's, like, a new Fortnite character who's, like, a little goth lady, and she floats in on, like, a little black, like, octopus lace umbrella. I think that's the gender of the day.
Of that, I want to be her.
I want to be her. I want to have her, but I can't
I
bring
want the
myself to
outfit.
subscribe to Epic, so I live without, and I live vicariously through others.
Yeah, I'm just gonna watch from a distance, just admire from a distance.
Yeah.
appreciate from afar.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so something like ebook actually brought up, and something I put in the little disclaimer of our notes, is that during the stream I'm gonna like interchangeably refer to folks as like non-binary or gender non-conforming, but recognizing that like everybody uses completely different labels, and we will probably get into a little bit of that during our conversation. But I want to kind of ease our way in by just kind of asking you all, what queer identities do you personally hold, and like what labels feel comfy for you. And y'all are welcome to go in whatever order you want to go.
I can go. I I identify with queer and non-binary. I call myself a non-binary woman, but also genderqueer and gender vague. At this point, both my gender and my sexuality is queer. To like, that's the best, like the most concise way I can put it. Because non-binary is even a placeholder. Genderqueer is the only thing that comes close to the way I feel. So queer, just my entire existence, just queer.
I loved the "I can go" and then the immediate like giggle afterwards. I'm like, wait, am I ready? Okay, yeah.
I'll go, did you think about your answer yet?
It was the confidence to the immediate panic. Oh, yeah, that sounds awesome. Anyone else want to share?
It definitely sounds relatable. I'm someone who also identifies with the queer identity, non-binary identity, trans identity, but I've been kind of going back and forth with whether or not I identify with bisexuality. It's been a very fluid spectrum for me. So yeah, I feel like sexuality is a big question mark right now. But queer is very comforting.
I agree. I think queer is kind of like a home that I've come home to. A house that's called a home. I think I can relate with Linux on the bisexuality. It's definitely like, it's not something as straightforward as like sometimes we wish labels could be. But it's kind of just like, it's very personable and personal. So a queer is just something that, it's like a little umbrella that kind of catches all the rain that you'd need it to.
Y'all are so cute with your little like metaphors and stuff. A little warm blanket, little umbrella. I love it. I love to see it. I personally, I love queer, don't get me wrong. Absolutely will take any opportunity to use that label, but I also really do like the specificity of labels for myself personally. I find that I can find like more niche community by finding those labels for myself as I've been able to, because I mean, as I'm sure some of you can relate, but like I've been in queer labeled spaces where it's very queer in sexuality but not very queer in gender, and then I'm can be kind of a lot of subtle transphobia, or even as like an ace person, for example, like there's can be a lot of like ace phobia, so or just like general misunderstanding. So I do like finding company in spaces that are for more specific identities that I hold, but it's hard because none of the words are ever like 100% accurate. Like I relate to you were saying about bisexuality. I feel similarly with my identity as a lesbian. Like I feel like it is an imperfect word doing its best to hold over what whatever sexuality is for me. So I do also understand that from that side of the coin as well. So both and depending on the day and the situation, because sometimes I also just don't have the spoons or energy to explain to people further than just queer. Queer is good enough. That's what I've got for you today. If I care about you and you have a question and we're someone who has that established relationship, like, you know, you can ask further. But if I don't know you, then queer is all you need. All you need, bestie. That's
That
it.
also reminded me that I definitely forgot that I'm ace.
I also.
You're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
that yeah, I'm ace.
Y'all hold
I also
multitudes. It's okay.
I hold too many. I hold too many. I'm an overfilled jar of knickknacks and shiny stuff. That's also the gender of the day. I also feel similarly about bisexuality because I've realized that I'm ace. I'm also realizing a lot of other stuff. I don't think me and the label of bisexual will divorce. Like that's my home. That was my home before queer became my home. But I'm like, I might be bisexual, but there might be some attractions I will not act on out of choice. But I recognize the attraction still remains. But that's a journey future young go on. Current Tiana is still navigating, realizing that we're ace, and that's gonna take a little bit. I got a lot. I'm unpacking a lot there.
Yeah, it's interesting the ways in which like our labels can inform one another. You know, like I definitely think that um, my gender and my aceness affect how I understand sexuality, and you could use any combination there and shift them around, but it can sometimes make it complicated to explain to people when I'm like, okay, like I'm this, but also like it depends, because I'm also like demisexual, but also like it kind of depends too, because I also identify with like trans for trans relationships, so I'm like, I don't have a simple answer for you. I don't have what you're looking for if you want it to be nice and easy, unfortunately. So
It's not in the cards. It's simply not in the cards.
yeah. Well, and I'm not in the business of spending a lot of time trying to make cis people understand, or hetero people understand me. My labels are purely for the purpose of connecting with other queer folk who generally just kind of get it. I mean, it may not be perfect, right? Because we all have different experiences, but they understand the basics, so I don't have to explain it, which is nice. Does anyone else have anything they want to share in terms of the queer identities that they hold? I know that, like T mentioned, I forgot saying ace, so I don't want to skip over anyone if they had any other thoughts. Perfect.
Got me racking my brain like, who else are you?
Who else am I forgetting?
I mean, Sapphics there too, but that kind of fit into the whole. It's a lot going on with my sexuality thing, but that's definitely right there. She's but beyond that, I'm an enigma.
An enigma.
To myself. I haven't even gotten to like how the world will perceive me. I haven't cared about that. I'm trying to figure out how I perceive me.
Yeah. Well, and you deserve to come first. Right? So obviously we all hold a lot of identities, and I would love to hear a little bit more about what your journey or what your story was of recognizing that you didn't fully identify on the binary spectrum, whether that's gender nonconforming, gender queer, non-binary, whatever label you choose to use. Like, what was kind of your story and journey to figuring out that that was a label that made sense for you? I love everybody's thinking face. We're all a bunch of soft humans, so if y'all get a lot of moments where we're all just like quietly thinking, I did unintentionally bring a panel of soft introverted people all together. So some of us are like introverted extroverts or extroverted introverts, but still.
Then I'm also autistic, so my brain is like, you have to wait a very specific amount of time before you speak, and I'm like,
is it my turn? Is someone else going? That's what my brain always does too. I totally get that.
I can start with some words,
Sure.
maybe some rambles.
Yeah, we love rambles. Rambles are rad.
So it's like back in high school, 2014, and I transferred to a new school which was full of like kids that didn't really belong in the mainstream school system and kind of just were like excluded a lot or had a hard time fitting in, and it was like a really small school, and I think that was the first time that I used they them pronouns. Yeah, my friend, I think I had met a friend that was using them, and they were really sweet. They were like, "Do you want to try?" I was
Aww.
like, "Yeah, I do." And they just started doing it, and um I've actually been like changing my name since I was 3. My mom told me like, "Oh yeah, no, you did not like your name and you insisted I call you something else." I was like, "Huh, interesting." So, yeah, it just kind of like it clicked. It felt like someone wasn't talking like over my head, but they were talking to me, and also as an autistic person, and just this I deal with a lot of like identity weirdness of like being perceived as a human body. I often don't feel like a person. I feel like a voice. I feel like an energy. I feel like my thoughts and my words and my ideas, and that might be with like maybe some self-esteem stuff. But they kind of helped me feel like I was more me, and I wasn't this idea of what I was supposed to be, because I grew up not feeling. I was like, what is going on? Why do I feel like I'm just not right? So like I with the labels and with the groups and the friendships, nothing was feeling right. And then it was like there was that moment in high school at my new little school where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like really excited about being a little person. um, and I was very fortunate to have an environment that supported that. I mean, it was a majority like queer population at that school, possibly neurodivergent as well. And so like then leaving that, once you graduate from a small area and you move on, it's often difficult to, like find your place. So going to a university where like I remember being in a little staff meeting of the housing place I was in, and they started it off with asking everyone their pronouns, and I was the only one that used like they them. Everyone else was like majority cis, and I remember like saying my pronouns and no one, like they just continued to use like she her for me. I was like, okay, so what's going on?
So why did we share our pronouns again?
So
Performative.
yeah, it was pretty performative, and I think I just kind of like let go of that for a time. And when I moved to Europe, that was like, I mean, not I think other languages are, we often, I think, like talk about a lot of English narrative,
Mm-hmm.
but like going to a country where it was heavily gendered, like nouns are heavily gendered, it was difficult. So I just like went back to using she, her, but um yeah, that's kind of been a bit of my journey. And then I moved back to the US and I was like, oh, heck yeah, we're changing my name again. Well, then the pandemic happened, and then, a lot of internal questioning and pondering happened and whatnot. But yeah, that's kind of like the origin story of just like me being just a little guy and getting, like permission or like welcoming of like, hey, do you want to try this? And them being really supportive. So yeah.
I love that your pal kind of handed you pronouns like they were candy. Like, hey, do you want to try it? Like, you can have some. Like, I don't mind sharing.
Yes. Just if you need if you need a picture, we would often take the blanket that was in the art room, bring it on to the lawn, and just make daisy chains while I was literally playing a melodica. Like, if you need a picture of what I was like in high school.
Of how queer Eva's already was back then.
Literal melodica. Yeah.
Cute.
I
Very
love
fun.
it. I love it. Absolutely adore you. That I just
Yeah, that gave me a lot of context, and I'm like, wow, I feel very much like understood by you now. I'm like, okay, I feel it.
and that warmed my little heart. I'm like, wow, I see
Yeah.
you. Like I already saw you, but like I see you.
Aw.
Yeah.
I love that you shared that with us. I'm gonna think about that a lot now.
I have pictures I can try to dig up.
Always.
I'm waiting for
Yeah,
them.
that would be really cute.
I love the lore.
Yeah, it was really cute because like me, I was, I had short hair and would wear rain boots when it wasn't raining, kind of a deal, just very and I got a message from someone a couple years later and they were like, "Hey, you helped me figure out I was queer." I was like, "What, me?" At that point?
Yeah, those are the moments we're reminded that, like, just by existing in our truth, like, it can have such a positive impact. I remember being the only staff at the entire university that I worked at for a while. It was me and one other person who used they, them pronouns, and that other person worked in the Queer Resource Center. So I was the only person working in, like, just an average Joe office using they, them pronouns, because rural northern Wisconsin. And I remember I had a shirt that I would wear sometimes because I liked being a little bit feisty that said "Queer resistance is beautiful," and I would wear it to work. And I had a student one time, he looked at me and he said, "Can you wear that?" And he said it very judgmentally. And I was like, I knew where this was headed, right? In my brain, I'm like, So I go to start explaining it to him, like, yes, I can wear it and blah, blah, blah. And he just kind of walks away. Like, we don't really, like, fully finish the conversation. He just, like, very awkwardly is like, okay. And then years later, like, I don't know, 1 or 2 years later, I find out that kid himself, like, came out as queer. Because, like, there's that kind of internalized ish that we all have to work through. And later he was like, I was really grateful that you were walking around being queer. I think I was just mad that I wasn't yet walking around being queer and I was taking it out on you. And I was like, yes, these are those reminders of, like, even in the kind of ish moments, like, the positive impact that you can be having by just existing as the human that you are. That was totally a side tangent that had nothing to do with the question, but
Appreciate this tangent.
No, yeah,
We love
definitely.
tangents.
Do we?
You get a bunch of neurodivergent people together and all we do is go on tangents.
That's
most
a
likely.
Yeah.
Does anyone else want to share about their journey to identifying as non-binary or gender non-conforming?
I am kind of similar, but, like, also not with E. Like, there's some similarities there. For me, I have always felt kind of confused about gender being autistic. gender never made sense to me because one, I need things to be very straightforward, and nothing about gender is straightforward, especially when it comes to gender roles. Like I was always extremely confused because everyone's like, girls are supposed to do this, but then you also have all these people saying all these things that girls cannot do or should not do. Like the biggest source of confusion hit when I first entered high school, and this was the very first time I started feeling like about being a girl, because this is like around the time where I don't know if this has ever been something similar, but like it's like that typical high school kind of thing where everyone like trashes on like preppy girls, but like even if you're not preppy, if you're simply a feminine girl, like that would be trashed on, because everyone, like you would have people who either had their internalized misogyny, or like the people who were alternative and were like meh meh meh, no pop music, no prep stuff, which is very interesting later down the line.
Anything
but
like basic was always very like judged.
yeah, so like even if you're just existing, not really kind of anything, you are told that you are not doing it right. So I was literally everywhere I turned in high school, I was basically being told that I wasn't doing girl right. And but also masculinity felt extremely ick. Like I felt extreme dysphoria when I was trying to perform masculinity, because at the time, essentially, if you were feminine or basic, the only way to be approved, kinda, at my school was if you were a tomboy, if you like showed that you could do the things that the guys did. I don't even understand what this crap came from, but I would try to perform in that style, but it was very much not real. Like it wasn't something I wanted to, it wasn't comfortable. It was like putting on a performance and trying to mask when you're already masking as someone who is autistic and also Black, just constantly like having to put up all these walls of protection to navigate a lot of societal crap. And I this was extremely confused. Like none of it ever made sense. I didn't feel right in myself in any way that I tried to be. And it didn't take until after I actually got out of high school. Like I didn't actually hear the word non-binary until I hit maybe 11th grade. I came out as bisexual right after high school. So when I realized I realized I was bisexual because I realized I was attracted to non-binary people. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm also attracted to girls. And I'm like, there's nothing heterosexual about the way you feel about people. So I was like, okay, right, okay. There's different genders out here. There's different gender expressions. It's like, all right, but I just didn't think anything of it for myself because I'm like, just here, girling it up, being a girl, two girls in like a trench coat, trying to be a woman, like very much not doing this correctly. And so I get out of high school, still not really thinking about gender. 2017 hits. This is 2 years after I graduated high school. I am like neck deep in queer crap already. Like me, there's little to no cishet people around me whatsoever. Like I have magnetized all the queer people across various states, and it's very much you are involved in it. And so I've been privy to conversations about gender. I've watched like I've watched journeys through gender and transitioning and everything. So it's not like I don't know what any of this means, but none of it clicks to me. I'm still like, girlhood just don't feel right. Why does it not feel like it doesn't feel, I don't feel like it's enough. It doesn't feel like I don't feel like I'm my entire self. So I start asking questions. Like I feel like whenever my queer trans friends will tweet talking about, you know, when you get that one message from like the cis person, like, hey, let me ask you about your gender. That was me. So I would slide into my friend's inbox and I'm like, hey, can I talk to you about I was like, how did you know? And they were like, I was like, my biggest thing was that I was like, do you have to feel dysphoria? Because at the time, lots of trans medicalists were like, you cannot be trans unless you feel dysphoria. Now, spoiler alert, Tiana does feel dysphoria, but I'm not able to recognize what that is for another like 3 years after this. So lots of conversations are happening and I'm like, maybe I'm agender. So I play around with that identity for a little bit, but I'm still a little Like, I don't do this outside of my in real life friends in Maryland. Like, when I'm up there with them, I'm like, okay, this is who I am. Sometimes people use they them pronouns for me, sometimes they don't. I'm not really caught up on the pronouns. I'm still stuck on the internal turmoil in my head. So that happens, and then I was also in a not so good relationship with someone who didn't really understand me. So I was kind of convinced that I just had an issue with gender roles and not gender. So I kind of went back to thinking that I was cis until last year when I started actually like I started online first because I was very much afraid to open up to my partner at the time about my gender because I had to hear a lot about how everyone was just being non-binary. So it made me feel very unsafe in exploring that part of myself with someone that I'm supposed to like love and everything. So I'm only online. Like I started using they she pronouns or she they. I started out with she they. Then I went to they she and I just like wanted to play around with people, you know, occasionally using it for me. And then the more I started feeling people use they for me, the more irate I got when people actively ignored the they to use she for me. And I'm like, that's not right. That's not right. I don't like that. So then I went to my best friends and I was like, y'all, I think I want to start using them pronouns. So it would mean a lot to me if you only use that and rarely ever use she, her for me. Because I want to explore this and I don't know how to do this with anyone else. And y'all, I trust y'all, love y'all. Like they like very much word vomit my gender exploration onto them. And they're like, okay. Like I was so anxious. I was shaking and I was like, listen, can you do this for me because I don't know what else to do and I don't really understand what's going on, but I need to feel what this feels like to know if this is correct. So around this time I'm starting to see people use words like, you know, neuroqueer and gender vague and genderqueer, and I'm like, I'm seeing autistic people talk about the very specific ways they feel about their gender, and I'm like, Tiana will remember that. Okay. So after a very long amount of time of like just thinking about my gender and having people use they them for me, I kind of was like, okay, I don't feel like I'm not a woman, but I'm a Black woman. I don't feel womanhood in the typical way that womanhood is defined. I only feel Black womanhood, but I'm not only a Black woman. I am a lot of things. My entire existence encompasses multitudes, and I don't want to be confined to womanhood because that's not, you know, the only way I feel represented. So I started going with identifying as a non-binary woman. Very much still vibing with trans. I found out that I am intersex, so I'm like, wow, I'm technically cis because I definitely have male chromosomes. My mom wanted a boy so bad, and then she got a girl, and I'm like, I'm not even a girl. I'm like, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a nothing. So I'm kind of just here, but yeah, it's very chaotic. I feel very good where I am now though. Surrounded by people who see me, like I've gotten to the point where the pronouns don't even matter as much to me anymore because at the end of the day someone can use the correct pronouns for you and not see you for who you are. But I'm surrounded by people who see me for me. Like my best friends know that when I say I'm a girl, I'm like girl, but not like cis girl.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is where I am.
I'm really happy that you feel like you've gotten to like a place where you feel good about it now after, you know, a lot of back and forth that we all go through trying to figure out what the deal is, you know?
Yeah.
Lunix, did you want to share what your journey has been like?
Definitely. It's been a lot of like ups and downs with my gender, but I think I always kind of knew that I was different than a lot of people. And when I was younger, I would always like to swap clothes with my friends, and it didn't matter like who they were. I was just like, I really like your jacket. Can I wear your jacket? And then there was this one day in elementary school where me and this new kid, I forgot their name. I like tried to remember it, but I forgot it. But we swapped a whole outfit. Like we swapped like our shirts, our pants, our shoes. I don't even know how I fit in their shoes, but we went a whole day, and I think that was like the happiest moment of my gender and like my gender realization. And for a long time, growing up in a very conservative part of California, and then being told that you're a boy with hyper masculinity and then toxic masculinity, and then the violence that you experience in like public school systems, specifically in those settings, it kind of took me away from my gender. So I wasn't really focused on who I was. It was mostly just survival. And it wasn't until after high school and I started college that I met like these really cool queer people, and they were just like what you was describing about like, oh, do you want to try this? Or like, have you thought about changing your name? And it's just like, have I thought about that? Um, and I definitely had moments with my high school best friends where I would come out to them online. So it was very much online in the beginning. Um, and I always told them like, hey, I kind of want to use they them pronouns, or I'm not comfortable with being called gay anymore. I'm not comfortable with gender fluid. I want to try non-binary now. And for some people they got it. For other people they didn't really understand. And I'm kind of with T too, where it's like I'm just gonna do me, and I don't really have the space or capacity to have people understand me and perceive me. It's like I'm trying to perceive myself. Uh, and if you're not there with it, then I can't be there with you. Um, but I recently like got to a point now after college and just kind of exploring and then going back to school. I'm kind of like, okay, this is me. I like this non-binary term. I like they them pronouns. I like my chosen name, and there's even more complexities with names, and people are like, is that your real name? And it's just like, it is my real name, and you kind of play with it. And there's been times where I just see people like completely like take a back because they really wanted you to say something else when you said, no, that's my real name.
Mm,
Okay, move on. Like, okay, thank you.
yeah,
So it's been chaotic, but it's been good where I've been comfortable where I am.
I love to hear that. I
I love that for you.
I think it's so interesting when people talk about moments of gender exploration as like they were younger, because I personally have very few memories of childhood, which is probably a hashtag trauma thing. But I had a not very good family home life, so there wasn't really an opportunity to focus on, kind of similar to what you were saying, Lunix, of like the public school system kind of putting you in a position where you were just in survival mode. Like it was the school system, and then for me it was also family things that just like completely kept me from having any energy to even potentially explore queerness. I definitely had an all queer friend group, but none of us knew that or talked about that. It was just very much like birds of a feather flock together. Like it just happened. Like we just all were that way without really knowing until way later, outside of high school, that we were all identifying as queer in different capacities. But it wasn't really until college and I moved far away from my parents and far away from rural northern Wisconsin that I had the opportunity to even consider any gender things. And once I did get to school and I got involved in the Queer Resource Center, and there were staff there and people there who were using chosen names and chosen pronouns and all of that, um, I got more curious and I started researching online, watching a lot of like gender nonconforming content creators. They're coming out videos on YouTube circa like I don't know, 2015 to like 2019, when a lot of the bigger YouTubers, like queer YouTubers, were making all kinds of videos about their queer identities. I was binging those. I remember sitting in my living room on like a break during college, like sophomore year, and watching Ash Hardell come out to their mom as non-binary, and it was the first time I'd ever seen a coming out video for something other than like for someone who was non-binary, right? Because they were telling their mom that they wanted top surgery and that they needed their mom's help post-surgery, but they also had to navigate, you know, explaining gender to them, because it was like, so are you a boy? And they were like, well, no, not exactly. And I just remember feeling very much like I resonated with a lot of the content that they were putting out there. And in hindsight, that was probably the start to my journey being a queer content creator, like far before I even put a single piece of content out there, just like consuming a lot of content from queer creators and it having such a big impact on my life. But it was I was stimming with a D20 in my hand and I dropped it on the floor. In hindsight, that was probably the start of it, and it was pretty much straightforward from there. Obviously not straightforward totally. Like my parents, they know, but they don't know. Like I've never sat them down, but I think my presence online is very publicly queer, very publicly non-binary, so if they wanted to figure it out, then they would figure it out. I don't think they do, though, so they remain willfully ignorant to anything that I post about queerness. But that was kind of my journey. So it was a very late start. What did we roll? Let me see if I can get it from underneath my desk without spinning it. We rolled a 12. A 12 today.
I wanted it to be a nat 20 so bad.
I wish.
I'm glad you picked it up, because I was like, please just tell me the number, because I would spend the rest of the stream being like, what's the number?
I was setting up for my very, very first D&D session yesterday, and look at how pretty. I mean, Toasty has like 1,000,001 dice sets, so, but I like this one. It's like sparkly gold and like little red flecks.
I'm gonna get some iridescent dyes so that I can get back into D&D, because I haven't played since before the pandemic, and my DM moved to Virginia, so I'm like, how are we supposed to play now?
Online, I guess. That's what we're gonna do for ours, so.
I'll have to like be less afraid of people.
I believe in you. Maybe after I do my first one, I can help. Maybe we can set up something in Whimsy. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked. What are we talking about? Where'd the brain cell go? Oh, okay, cool. So this is a vague question, so I feel like it's hard to ask. Because I feel like if I were asked this question, I would be like, but I do think it's an important one, so I'll ask it anyways, and if anyone doesn't want to answer, that's fine. But, like, what does being non-binary, being gender non-conforming, being genderqueer, what does that mean for you specifically? Because I think it's interesting the way in which people can share one label and perceive it differently.
I think that my label is not for the consumption of cis people, cis het people. It is not for their understanding. It is not for their grace of trying to, oh, I just don't get it. Like, what do you mean? It's not for them. And it will never be. It is strictly for my own and my own community. and it is a complex thing. It is a like multifaceted, multi-layered, as like we've been talking. I think we all are. And yeah, I don't know. It's not like I really push back on like this. It's not just like a pill, since people can easily consume and like understand. Like I want it to be confusing because it's been confusing for me. I don't know. Those are some words. Some thoughts.
I accept the rambles.
Thank you.
For me, I'm all and nothing at the same time. There's no word in the English. There's no words. There's no phrases. There's no descriptions in the English language, because that's the only language I got that can define the way that identity or my identity feels. Like I said, all or nothing. I'm a bird. I'm two foxes in a trench coat. I'm a ethereal ass, pardon me, ethereal black goddess, but I'm also, you know, kind of. I'm like, on one end, I'm like an ethereal black goddess. On the other, I'm like, like a very like a femboy. Like that's like as far as into masculinity as I would get. I'm like, if you like a Floridian stud in cargo shorts and flip flops and a button up shirt, but I'm also like Barbie. So I'm like, it's like you said, it's confusing. It's going to be confusing for anyone. Honestly, I don't even explain myself really to other queer and gender non-conforming people, because I'm like, listen, you not like we y'all will get it more than like a cis person will, but like no one, I can never explain how exactly it feels in my head to anyone. I can, but like y'all will have glimpse, like a better glimpse of it than someone who does not feel like they're not the gender they were assigned. But yeah, I'm like all or nothing. I'm just here. There he is. I'm here.
Just existing is enough. It's valid to just be here. For me, it's like kind of a rejection of being squeezed into a box and feeling very limited and I don't want to say misunderstood, because I'm obviously, like E-Bike said, like people still don't get it, right? Like even as open as out as I am, as, you know, confident as I am in myself and my identity and my pronouns and my name, people still don't get it. But like I just personally feel really small, I guess, when people impose labels on me that I haven't chosen. It feels like an action being done upon me without my consent, and I think consent is so important in every aspect of life. And so for me, it's like taking back that, reclaiming that authority that I am the only one who gets to determine what labels I use, or I'm the only one who gets to choose what pronouns I use or what name you use for me, and that I have the authority in the situation because we're talking about my identity. And so if you want to disrespect those boundaries, then you just simply, unfortunately, will not be a part of my life anymore. And yeah, like E-Bug said, those are some words. I don't know if that like summarizes it perfectly or anything like that, but it's the kind of the first thing that came to my mind.
I feel that. I feel that a lot. And I like the word that you said, be with reclaim, and that's kind of what journey I'm on right now, of just reclaiming how I can feel comfortable in my own skin, whether that's what I wear or how I act or my mannerisms or how I talk with individuals or how I open up. There's only been a few times where I've been with other non-binary, gender non-conforming, like queer folks, gender queer folks. I've just been in their presence and like spending time with them. And for me, that feeling of non-binariness is just like so beyond our bodies, and once we have so many like people of similar experiences, similar identities in one space, we kind of just don't have to say too many words because we all kind of just understand, and then we all have this like feeling of like comfort and support. Not all the time, but there's been a few times in my like adult life with like adult queers where I'm just like, okay, I don't have to do anything and they get it. I don't have to say much and they get it. Um, and so I don't feel that often with the non-binary identity, especially it being like so confusing or hard for folks sometimes. And it's just like, you're not my people, like what B was saying. And it's like, I'm going to spend time with people that get it.
Yeah, I come with a limited energy span, just as like a chronically ill, like a neurodivergent person, and so I think I used to be so much of a people pleaser, and I would absolutely try to appease everybody. But I'm beyond that point in my life and at a point where if you just like aren't willing to get on board with me, then you're out. That's it. I don't have the spoons. I really do not. Unless you're like an essential part of my life for some reason, I have to navigate that with you, or I really care about you, and so I want to make it work. Other than that, banhammer, goodbye. IRL, real life banhammer. um, So, something that I noticed as we were getting ready for the stream and I was putting together some questions is that we all happen to use they, them pronouns in this particular space. I do want to make a small disclaimer to anyone who's watching to remind you that you can be non-binary and gender non-conforming and use any set of pronouns. That just happens to be the group we have here today, but I don't want you to feel invalidated or anything like that if you're a non-binary person who chooses to use binary pronouns or neopronouns or any combination of the sort. But while we are here, I did want to inquire with you all. You talked a little bit about your journey, so some of you sort of answered this already, but if you have anything you want to add of like how you wound up specifically with using they, them pronouns and determining that those were right for you right now.
For me, it was one of those like, it was kind of circumstantial, like, right, especially during the time that I started getting comfortable with using they, them pronouns. I hadn't, like, neo pronouns and stuff were not something that were being discussed in the spaces that I was in. I didn't actually see discussions about neopronouns until after 2020. And by that point, I wasn't even like, the only pronoun I had ever tested out outside of she, her was they, them. And, when I did, it felt close. But like when it came to like either creating one for myself or using ones that I already seen people use, like they, them wasn't perfect and neither were any of the other words. And I kind of just chose to go with the pronouns that was already accustomed to, but that I also would have had less issue trying to incorporate into my life. Like it was more of one of those like picking your battles kind of situation, because I'm already now about to tell people that I'm non-binary and to change the way that they perceive me. It's a lot easier to introduce they, them pronouns as an option, even though it's still not very easy, than an alternative. I feel like now if I wanted to, I'm in a better space with the people that I surround myself with, that if I was like, hey, I want to try out this neo pronoun, nobody would blink. But they, them just always felt like the only thing that kind of encapsulated closely what I felt like, all or nothing. Like, even though everyone's like, singular they has been in existence since like the 16th century, I am both a singular they and like a plural they. I'm a lot of things here. So they is kind of like a correct description for how to address me.
For myself, I know I started with they them trial in college. I had went to a conference with a bunch of other wonderful queer folks, and it had invigorated my desire to just kind of explore myself more and get more comfortable with who I was and how I was presenting myself to others as well. And that felt natural, easy, just the comfort of it was kind of the confirmation for me that it felt kind of like we've said before about some of the other labels, like home, like coming to using they them pronouns just felt very right. So that was easy in that regard. I mean, not always easy to get people to respect it, but for myself it was easy to be like, oh, like this shoe fits. And I did try using some neopronouns and trialed them online, actually. I trialed some neopronouns as a content creator, actually, which was a really interesting experience because I shared it on my Twitter. I was like, hey, just like letting you all know I'm gonna try this for a while. And everyone was really kind and really on board. But something that I did notice was kind of a constant expectation of education when using neopronouns, of like constantly everyone being like, okay, like how do you pronounce it? Yeah, T's just grabbing some meds, so no worries, friends. T's all good. Constant expectation of answering questions that I found to be quite exhausting. So I not only that, but the particular neopronouns I used just didn't feel as safe, as comfy, as natural. So I decided to step away from them, and I feel like there's a part of me that would love to trial some others, but the process is quite exhausting, I think. So it feels like sometimes I rarely really resonate with what T said of like the pick and choose your battles, of like getting people to use they them is like enough work. I really don't want to do more. So yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat with that.
That's very similar to like how I feel specifically when you said earlier that, you know, we already are chronically ill, got chronic pain. We have very limited energy, and I also experienced similar, like, look, in general, when you are mostly marginalized, you are expected to educate people on every aspect of who you are. You cannot just exist. And that was another layer to the picking and choosing my battles. It's like I already have to spend every waking moment explaining who I am to random people on the internet. I've stopped doing that. That's a big boundary for me. I'm not explaining myself to anyone. But you're expected to do it. And carrying that expectation on your back when you're literally trying to figure out who you are is so exhausting. And it feels like you have to deprive getting to share parts of yourself, because if you share parts of yourself, especially with a platform, it always comes with the expectation that you then deliver energy or exert energy to give people reasons and definitions for why you exist the way that you do. And I got enough of that.
Yeah, I feel that, especially like in newer spaces or spaces I'm not 100% out or comfortable talking about my identities. I'll have people that I'm close with know about my pronouns being they, them, but there's been other times where I've had to like pick and choose, and I'm just like, if I spent 6 months explaining my name to them, it's probably going to take them another 6 months for them to understand my pronouns. So let me just default for them because it's less work for me. And I know as someone who's also like processing their identity and like processing their life, and it's like I don't want to be on this stage, you asking 300 questions that I know you're going to ask every time you see me. I don't want that. So I feel that very much in myself.
I had a friend one time, a cis friend, and um, you know, she kind of was messing up my pronouns, like, pretty often. And we were having a conversation one time, and she was like, I don't remember how she worded it exactly, so this is obviously not, you know, word for word, but something along the lines of like I hope you don't hate me, like I'm sorry, like I'm trying, you know, whatever, I don't know. And I remember, like, the vibe she was giving off was as if my identity was just gonna crumple because she wasn't using the right pronouns for me, right? Or that I was just going to kind of like fall apart. And I was like, I am not, nothing's gonna happen to me because you use she, her pronouns for me. It's like if I started calling you Bob, but your name is Sarah. Like, it's not, it doesn't matter. But what it does do for me personally, at least, is it creates a barrier between me and you as to how close we can get. So if you care about our relationship and you would like to be close to me, then you need to get on board with respecting who I am and, you know, not just because I told her, I was like, you know what, the pronouns are not even the most important thing. It's, you could use the correct pronouns all day and still see me as a girl who's using they them pronouns, and that's still not what I'm looking for in an authentic friendship. And so for me, it's like, yes, I want people to respect my pronouns, but ultimately, whether or not you do is a signal to me as to whether or not you respect me as a person and what kind of friendship you want to open the door to. So, I don't know. Some thoughts.
I have some thoughts too. I think I might need a new captions link.
Oh, if it's just because it's like not popping up, it's sometimes Pixel Chat.
No, it says invalid invite.
Oh, okay. She decided to properly break on us then.
Yeah.
How rude.
I love the little at me. Ooh, captions please.
Captions, please. Thank you.
Captions. There you go.
Okay, connected. So yes, online spaces, being on Tumblr.
Oh yes,
Like,
Tumblr.
oh yes, learning how to HTML just to add a little pixel Pikachu on your Tumblr. Yes. I think that those spaces really helped me kind of explore names, pronouns, sexuality, like dating, having little online girlfriends. 15. um, but I wanted to kind of like emphasize something Tiana said about like that, like when you were like the pronouns that were around the space that I was at the time were just they them. Me too. Like the first, it was this person that identified as genderqueer, and it was like, whoa, that's a thing. Because it wasn't in my like rhetoric of understanding. The other thing that I feel like is important to like contextualize is also like popular media, non-binary representation as being like majority. In at least my experience, the majority of what I saw was like white people, like thin-bodied people, attractive people, and that was like one sphere. And I feel like that was like not the reality of, like for me, that as being a white person, I can, it was a different experience as being, person of color, black or indigenous. So like I just feel like the popular media growing up is of what we saw was of non-binary people wasn't helpful with people that were trying to find community. And also, like Twitch spheres have been really helpful in helping me. Like on a side note, the Twitch spheres have been really helpful for me in finding like pronoun exploration with just like the pronouns command of and specifically streamers being like, hey, and and stating like very clearly, if you want to try out a new pronoun today, this space is for that and you can do that and you're welcome to try that out. And so I was like, oh cool, I did. And I tried out they, he for a day and I was like, no, not for me. So yeah, I think it's helpful having an online space to kind of, from screen names to like Discord, the ability to change. God, I love Discord for this. You can change your username or like the name that appears, and it syncs. Like everything changes automatically, so no one knew really what you were being called unless like people specifically said your name, which is like really handy. Yeah, words, words.
No, they were good words. I think it's really important to recognize that I think even today, a
Yeah,
majority of the larger queer influencers, there's still an element of being digestible to a cishet audience that algorithms and companies and even just biased people feed into, that results in, even queer creators who have other intersectional identities not getting as much representation as others. And I know for myself, for example, a huge thing was kind of what you said, E, was like none of the non-binary representation I ever saw was fat
exactly.
anywhere. And so like when it came to things, it wasn't until truly like I think like within the last 2 months that I saw this person made a really helpful video on TikTok where they showed off their top surgery results as a fat person and then encouraged other people to also show their results if they felt comfortable. And it was huge for me because I had considered my interest in top surgery, but it felt completely out of reach because doctors are so fat phobic, and I also had no idea what the results would look like on a body like mine. Like, I knew it wouldn't look like what I was seeing in most of the popular YouTubers or TikTokers who were trans or queer. And so it was like hard to feasibly put myself in those shoes and imagine it for myself as a potential future option. And so I feel like even though there obviously are a lot of queer creators out there, there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of better, proper representation of those intersectional identities alongside queerness. Yeah, those are words.
Yeah. Snaps.
We're gonna probably get into that a little bit more too, because we definitely do have a question about what other identities folks hold that affect their gender. But I don't want to skip over chosen names, because that is the next question we had, and I know Lunix touched on it, and I think it is an important conversation to have. So for you all, did you select a chosen name as part of coming out? And if you did or didn't, why or why not? And how did you decide what name to go with?
I can go because I know my answer would be pretty quick since I did not change my name. This is the name I've always had. I considered choosing a different name for a couple of brief stints over the course of figuring out my gender identity and especially after settling into it. But for me, my name never felt like it didn't fit. And I think it's also just because of the way that I perceive identity and how I perceive how I feel when I exist in the world. For me, my name didn't weigh much in that regard. It's one of those things I don't really think about, never really thought about. Like, I like my name. I love the story behind my name. Um, don't like the amount of times people say such a simple name wrong incorrect. Or such a simple name wrong. Um, but when I thought about, or when I think about who I am and how I've changed over settling into my queerness, settling into my transness, my name, whether it's a different name or my current name, never, it didn't feel like it wasn't a good name for it. You know, like because I feel like all or nothing, there's no kind of name I think I could find that would fit with how I feel about navigating gender in the world and everything. So for me, it's like most people just call me T anyway. So I don't really hear my name often as well. So I think that's another part of it. I'm like, yeah.
I did change my name, but in a very specific kind of way, I guess. To again ease conversations in labor I didn't want to do. So I essentially chose a shorthand version of my given name that I felt more comfortable with. Because that was really easy to get my parents on board with because they just perceived it as a nickname in my family, because at the time I obviously was still spending a decent amount of time in that space, and so I didn't want to deal with that space was full of a lot of turmoil already, so I didn't really the water was bubbling over the pot already, so there was no room for also instigating conversations about gender and all of that. So my mom used to call me B just as the shorthand with the first letter of my name. And I went to college and I was like, I want to change my name, but I don't really want to explain it to everybody. So why don't I just go with B, and then I'll add like the EE at the end and like, go for like my own spelling of it or whatever. I'll admit that sometimes I feel unsure of that decision. Sometimes I wish that I had given myself the freedom to explore and kind of not chosen my name based off of other people instead of what would make me happy. And sometimes I still consider exploring different names, but I haven't yet.
I feel like my name journey was very fast, but also kind of made sense. So for my name, it's Lunex, so it's combining the Spanish version of Luna with X to make it more gender neutral. And I remember I was with one of my friends from undergrad. They were going to move to DC, and it was like a full moon. I was doing laundry with them at like a random laundromat, and we were just talking about their chosen name and like how they felt comfortable with it. And I, again, in that moment was like, I kind of want to change it. And so I think having someone there to help me change my name also gave me confidence in that decision, because I'm the worst with picking usernames or the worst with making like new identities for myself. And I always find comfort in someone else supporting me in that. And so it's been a while since I've had this name. And I think as I get older, the more people try to like co-opt it and like understand it and like break it down and try to make it seem like it's something when it's not that. There's been so many times where people like say it wrong, or they try to like over explain it, like, oh, you mean like this, and I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. And it's kind of been a point now where I've had this name for so long, and I've seen it go kind of downhill, like mental health wise, and I'm like, I don't want to change my name because like I 100% like fully support my original creation of my name because I'm deeply connected to like moon and like spirituality and all of that stuff, and I don't want to change my name, but it's also taxing as a person with a different name that combines two languages, and having to over explain that is getting a little taxing. So it's a big question mark.
Yeah. Names.
So,
Oh, you go ahead,
oh,
Eva.
sorry.
Nope, you go.
Sorry.
Exclamation points,
um,
sorry.
names are interesting. Um, okay. So, well, I just wanted to I remember Linux when you were talking about people are like, "Oh my gosh, is that your real name?" And you're like, "Yes." I if I had $1 for every time, I'd have like a lot of dollars. Um, my answer is, "Oh, you mean my government name?" Like, what are you trying to do here? But I get it a lot at work. They're like, "Your name, what's your name?" I'm like, "E, lowercase." And they're like, "Oh, okay." But I think I've like had a gentle permission to change my name like ever since I was 3, just because I did change it. Uh, and like I changed my given name to a short form version of that. And then when I like was trying out pronouns, I changed it again to a different short version of that given name. Um, but I think it was difficult. I didn't actually realize that I was allowed to belong and to fit within the trans identity because I grew up hearing from my mom, "I'm so glad you're not trans. I'm so glad that we don't have to deal with that." Because I had friends that were, and I remember her saying, like, "Oh, I'm so glad that's not you." Because it's like, what? And then it was difficult because I was like, wait, that is me. And so that was tricky. And then I went back to my full given name. And then it was like when I first started going on Twitch, I was like, actually Tom, a friend in chat, they were they were someone that I went to because we were in the same Discord server from the same like streaming community. I messaged them and I was like, "Hey, I think I want to like I want to try out some new names. Do you think that's okay?" And they were like, "Heck yeah, go for it." So, yeah, big shout out to Phyla for helping me in that. I think having community in those exploration times are really helpful. Um, and I remember I was telling B recently in their stream of like when I worked at the plant nursery, I worked in the houseplant greenhouse and it was always just super hot and I was just sitting in the back of the room. I'd play Animal Crossing rain music for people and I would just be looking through books and writing down names that I liked. But nothing really felt right. So growing up, I had a different experience from T there. Like when I'd have to say my name, it felt like repulsive in a way. Like it felt, I don't know why. Maybe this is because of the whole like I don't feel like a body thing, but like it felt like pain to tell people my name. Um, And E is like small. It's easy to say. It's just a letter. So maybe that's why it's easier for me to say, but I first started with like Ellie Elliot, and I really liked how I was like, if you could please use them interchangeably, because that's how I was really feeling at the time. I had a combination of like femme and mask, and I really liked how they could flow together. But then I went out into the world when I had to go back in person for school, and people just used Ellie. And I was like, it was not good. I was like, why are they just choosing the feminine name? And so I just went with E because it's like, it's not feminine, it's not masculine, it's literally a letter of the alphabet.
And
Like,
you can't get it wrong. And if you do get it wrong, you
well,
are
you can.
actively trying to get it wrong. In which case, I learned something about you, anyways.
You can get it wrong if you spell it uppercase, because I don't know
True.
why my brain is like that, where it's like, no, it's lowercase. But my partner made me this when it was when I did go buy Elliot. This is a Pokemon card for me, and it's Elliot, and there's like dreamy, and then it says cool, 10 out of 10 points. So this is something that I have on my desk.
That is absolutely you as a Pokemon.
100.
That's you. Like, oh my good. It's and the little like little tie.
Yeah, I
That's
got my
just a little
bolo.
guy. Just a little guy. That's you.
I do love Rowlet very much. Oh, yeah, so we put such an importance on like oh in terms of your question be like did you like change your name when you came out? And I guess I did at that point, but it didn't feel like it was a like a not to commercialize identity, but it wasn't a rebrand. Like it just felt like I think it was an unfolding, you know? I feel like it's a bit like a bloom of a flower that it kind of morphs and changes, and it's a bit challenging when you have an issue if you have a hard time with being perceived, um, and there's a such an importance on how you express yourself to the world and how you have to be like labeled with names to like get it right the first time. Um, but yeah, words.
Yeah. No, that's an important reminder, E, though, that, like, you don't have to get, you can trial things. And that doesn't mean that you're any less valid in your identity. It's just that, cis het people just go with what they're given for the most part. And, well, there's nothing objectively wrong with that if you're comfortable with that. If you consider it and still feel like that is the right name for you, that is the right pronouns for you, that's cool. But for the rest of us who weren't comfortable with what we were handed, it sometimes takes a little practice and a little bit of actively hearing people call you something or use pronouns for you to see if it feels right, because just doing it in your head isn't always enough to process whether or not you're feeling comfortable. So if any of you are in a position where you need to where you want to trial things, and anyone makes you feel bad about that, they're in the wrong, not you. They are in the wrong, not yous. Alright, let's take a wee little stretch break, a little water break, bathroom break, etc. And come back in like 5 minutes, okay? Y'all also chat. You too, you take a break too. We'll be right back, okay? Hello, friends. We are back from our break. Thank you for hanging out. We're excited to wrap up the last 20-25 minutes of today's panel. So, my brain always struggles with transitions. Okay, I'm back. I promise. I'm here. Hello. So the next question that I had for you all, and again, as we've gone on, we've kind of touched on a lot of these things, so if you don't have anything to add, that's totally okay, but if you do, then that's super rad as well. So in your experiences, have you come out as non-binary to people in your life? And like IRL, and how did that go for you, and how did you explain it, if you did, to people who didn't know what non-binary was before you came out?
I can start. When I started at my new job at the bakery, the way I like to do it is if I assess the situation and I see, am I going to be comfortable with these people? Do they feel like they're giving me, that they're cool
The
about it?
vibes.
Yeah. Um, I like to ask them what their pronouns are. Be like, oh yeah, by the way, I didn't get a chance. Can I ask what your pronouns are? That kind of like sprinkles in like, oh, we might be fruity here. um, they were like, oh yeah, she, her, and then they both said she, her. And I was like, okay, rad. Yeah, I use they, them. Um, one of them was really kind, well-intentioned, but they did say, oh yeah, we used to have a they, them that worked here. I was like, oh, don't do that, by the way. We're not a they, them. I mean, some people might like to identify that way, but
Like
I personally
self-identification is okay,
don't.
but don't
Yeah.
call other
No.
people that.
Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of that. But then, I got closer with someone that I was closing with every night, and she knew, and I think I noticed that she was kind of like slipping up a little bit. So I just like gently was like, hey, I just wanted to like let you know like if you could use like they, them for me again. And she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she's been really, really wonderful about she'll slip up sometimes, but she won't make a big deal out of it, which is really nice. She'll just be like, oh, sorry, they, and then move on. Just like, great, because we don't need to make a big scene out of it. And it did like have some education. Our relationship got to the point where she's like a friend to me, and I wanted to educate her. And being like from like I like education, and like I like teaching people that I care about. And so this was like, no, like let me explain, and I'll like teach you about what it means and stuff like that. And so it's been really, really wonderful to be able to feel supported in my workplace, by my coworkers, and like yeah, it's really nice. And I will be transferring departments next week. But they in the interview, I let them know that I was autistic and that I was like non-binary, and they were like, great. So yeah, they are already using my correct pronouns, which is like really nice. And on my apron, I have my pronouns. I'm probably like the only person that works in the store that has pronouns. Like, not has pronouns, because everyone has pronouns, but like
I have
on
no
my
pronouns, don't perceive me.
No, there's so many like funny people. They're like, I don't do pronouns. I'm like, oh, sick. Okay, awesome. Like,
Nice, I'll just
thanks
use
for
your
letting
name
me
for you
know.
then.
Yeah. But yeah, I feel really grateful to have that experience, to be able to feel like welcomed and cherished and like celebrated and all that good jazz.
For myself, I would say in most spaces, I make it so blatantly obvious in every potential capacity that you can't really miss it. So I usually don't have to quote unquote come out. Like, it's on my resume, it's on my LinkedIn, it's, you know, in every bio on every social media platform. Granted, I now work in in the content creation realm full time, so I don't really have that experience of that I had in the past of like entering a physical workspace and having to like navigate those conversations, because if you're approaching me, then you've probably already seen my about section on wherever. That's like a unique thing to working in content creation, where like I don't, like, you know who I am kind of before you approach me, or you know the basics anyways. And even when I was working in person, again, because it's like on my resume and stuff, like, you couldn't have hired me without knowing that I'm non-binary or that I'm using they them pronouns. So that's convenient. People still definitely like misgender or don't get everything right, of course, but I didn't really have to, in a working environment, sit people down and be like, I'm non-binary, this is what that means, like, yada yada yada. But as a reminder that you can be very out in one space and very not out in another, I have also never navigated that conversation with family, except for with one cousin who chose not to be willfully ignorant and acknowledged that I had they, them, and non-binary in like basically every social media platform. And I was like, hey, like, what does that mean? Like, you know, what's cool about it or whatever. But it's interesting. I was actually super interested to hear y'all's answers to this, because I am in that anxiety-ridden portion where I'm gonna need to do that soon with my parents, which I'm not at all excited about. But I have two non-binary partners, and while I'm fine with them messing up my pronouns and, you know, using my dead name, I don't want them doing that to the people I care about. So now I have to like sit them down and be like, okay, this is what we're doing now. These are the boundaries. So I haven't had to do it in the past, but I'm gonna have to do it soon. So I'm intrigued to hear about others' experiences and any recommendations you have for navigating that, because I have a feeling it's not gonna go down without a couple inappropriate statements and maybe made as an attempt to make a joke that aren't going to be funny. So we'll see.
Similar experience. Like I'm kind of in the middle between B and E here, and how my experience has been about it. I didn't start like going back to using they them pronouns until after I quit working in person, because I lost the ability to do so. So all of my experiences like when it comes to work environments, have been exclusively online or remote. I very much don't come out necessarily. I kind of just, this is it, this is me. There's no, I'm finna be like, hi, yes, now I'm non-binary. No, I just started putting my pronouns there, correcting people over time. I've gotten to the point where I correct people less, even though my pronouns are kind of everywhere. People will still be like, hey, girly, and I'm like, are you lost? Is the girl in the room with us? Because I don't know what girl you're talking about. But with work, I started working literally, like, my editor who got me my job that I had gotten at the end of 2020, essentially, like, already knew my pronouns were them. She'd seen me, she, like, in my inbox, and my signature is right there, and when she introduced me, she went, this is Tiana, they are such and such. Like, we let it know, like, it was just obviously this person's pronouns are they them. Their pronouns are like right there. So I've never had to have that conversation with anyone. I kind of just arrive as I am and correct you when you don't look at the very many places where you can find out who I am. But as for my family, I handle it very similarly. So I was very estranged from a part of my family outside of my direct family for a very long time. I slowly started letting more people back in, but when I let them back in, it was very much into spaces where I'm actively discussing that I'm queer. I'm actively talking about my pronouns, letting it be known, like, there's nothing straight here. My mother, I came out to her as bisexual through a heated conversation about homophobia, And ever since then, I have not come out. She just knows that her child is queer, and she uses my pronouns occasionally. I never cared if my mom did, because I'm like I said, she probably does not understand what non-binary means to see me as non-binary. So whether or not she used my pronouns correct or not didn't matter. She does though. She sees me interact online, so she sees that people use they them for me. We've had conversations about these pronouns for other people, so I notice when she uses them, and I don't really notice when she doesn't. Like I said, I never really cared about that. But outside of my mother, I just arrive like in public space. That I arrive as I am, and I don't explain myself to anyone in my family. I will probably never come out to my father because he will not understand. Like my mother will understand a little more because my mother has more exposure to queerness than my father does. So my mother might have had some ignorance that she had and worked through and stuff she's still working through, but it's a lot easier to explain that to her than it would be for me to explain it to anyone else. And I'm going to save myself the energy. I just I'm lucky in that I got to explore this aspect of myself after I worked in person, because I don't believe I would have been able to have those conversations because I was surrounded by cis white people who also did not understand what transness looked like outside of like the very limited, representation that we had at the time. And I did not have time to be breaking down my gender identity on the line at Chipotle. So I'm like just very glad that I can experience this now. It's a lot easier to demand that people see you as who you are, one, because I'm also trans misogynistically exempt. I don't deal with what someone who is a trans woman or someone who was assigned male at birth and is femme will deal with. Those are not experiences that I will deal with. It's a lot easier for me to go, this is who I am, than if I were that. So there's a lot of ease that comes with being able to take up, demand the space that we all deserve, because I don't have to deal with that side of the danger. Like people will still misgender me, and I kind of just go but outside of that, like there's safety there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that a lot. There's a lot of safety that a lot of queer folks, non-binary folks don't get to. They basically get to choose, right? They have to choose between the safety or being their authentic selves 100% of the time. And so I think as I've gotten older and been in different like work environments, now I'm more like I'm going to announce it and it's going to be known. And now you know, so now you choose whether or not you will perceive that, understand that, use that. There's times where my old nonprofit job, I was in the middle of transitioning from using my given name to my chosen name. And it got to a point where I was just like, okay, we have this queer newsletter for our job, and I'm just going to change my name and my pronouns on the queer newsletter. And then when it gets released, everyone will know my pronouns. And so that was me coming out in a non like making a whole statement going in front of everyone. It was like this is now public knowledge, so now you perceive it, now you see it. There was a few times with like old coworkers and old bosses, they would be like, wait, what, you just posted this? And I was like, yes, I just posted this. This is who I am. Like I wanted to come out, and this is my way of coming out. So I think a lot of the times when we come out, we always have to remind ourselves like this is our choice, and that we should ultimately come out if we're ready to do so and if we want to. You don't have to come out. There's no one way to come out. And so like I always want to share that story for people, because it's like, yeah, I might have been like 22 years old, but I was still scared and I had social anxiety, and I was like, this is how I dealt with it. And then nowadays, moving on into the older spear of still having my given name attached to certain forms and having my chosen name be more external for folks. And so I always have those conversations with like hiring managers or working professionals, be like, okay, this is my legal name. This is how I fill out all my forms. But in the social aspect and in the job aspect, please use these names, please use these pronouns. And only you and other people in this space will know this, but no one else.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like always talking about that with folks. It's kind of difficult, but if you're straightforward and you try to just tell them like this is what it is, this is what it isn't, that can definitely help out in the coming out sphere. I also relate to not coming out to family members as much. Just yeah, safety is not a thing. Like I still haven't come out to my dad, and I've gone back and forth about whether or not I should come out to him. And I remember the one time I came out to him, I came out as gay, and that was my 21st birthday, and I was gonna go on a vacation with my partner at the time, and my dad was like, "Where are you going?" And I just like blurted it out in like a rage, like panic moment, and it definitely wasn't the most comforting coming out. So having multiple times to come out and kind of reclaim that for you and yourself, you kind of become more comfortable with coming out. So it's hard for some folks when they had like a negative coming out experience because then it makes it harder each time. But if you have more positive experiences, they'll definitely help you move through it and move through the pain of it. That was a lot of words.
No, it's good words though. We have hydration and posture reminders. So if you're being a shrimp, Thomas calling you out. um, Rad. Okay, so we're wrapping up here. Running out of time, but there is one last question I feel like is super important to get to that I want to squeeze in here before we say goodbye for the day. And that is kind of the one we touched on earlier, which is how have any of your other identities kind of affected or affected your relationship with gender, I guess I would say. So, like, kind of earlier, I talked about, for example, being fat. And we've touched on like being autistic and how that can affect gender, so that kind of thing, because I think that's a big way that being non-binary can be different for different people, and how we aren't just like a homogenous group that you can lump together and make like assumptions about, I guess.
I can go. So I think about this a lot. Of course touched on it in regards to being autistic and a little bit on being black, but with me being black, being a black someone socialized to be a black woman, gender is very much something that people will give to you and take away when the moment is fit. You are either you're masculinized for simply existing because black women are, due to racism, masculation is a common thing. Whether you're cis or not, if you are a black woman, that is something that you get, the cards you get dealt. But at times we are also stripped of the ability to be feminine, and because femininity, the way that the social standard for femininity is to be frank a white woman. Femininity is always reserved for white women. So in stepping into the world as someone who is black is stepping into the realization that I cannot perform in a way that other people are going to deem acceptable. So for me, that also plays into my non-binary identity. It's the all or nothing again, because it's only ever black and white the way the world sees blackness and how I'm going to exist. And with the added layer of me being disabled, a lot of ways I could potentially portray my gender to other people wouldn't be accessible to me. I gotta dress in a way that is comfortable. I can't dress the way that I might want to because I have fibro, and I'm autistic. Clothes are very difficult to navigate when you are in a body that hurts at like the slightest inconvenience. Like, so with every aspect of my identity, of my identity affects the way that I'm able to exist in the world, but also the way that I perceive the world. So they kind of all added up. Like if this was a mathematical equation, all my identities added up just enter equal non-binary no matter what. But yeah.
I think I relate to like the disability one. I remember writing a poem in college about the challenge of what I would like my gender expression to be versus what is achievable for me at the same time. So, you know, being fat in a world that doesn't make a lot of clothes accessible to fat people, being disabled, and then like T said, like clothes can definitely be painful. So like factoring that in, like I can't wear jeans, I can't wear any kind of like tight form-fitting things with seams, etc. So that inherently limits a lot of options, especially I feel like a lot more femme clothes are like more free flowing the way they're designed, whereas more mass clothes is like buttons and tight and folds and things that are not comfortable for me as a disabled person. And also as like having lived my entire life as like very low income as a disabled person also very much affects my ability to I don't feel I have as much freedom to purchase something just to try, just to see if I would like it. I feel like I have to be very confident in it being worthy of me spending the minimal amount of money that I have, especially because clothes for plus size people are more expensive as is. So those are the types of things that affect not so much my gender identity, but my gender expression is very much affected by the other identities that I hold. Yeah, same T. Same. I don't know if eBug or Lunix, if y'all have any thoughts that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I definitely see how my like physical body and kind of how I'm moving into a space of recognizing like my lineage and being somewhat of like mixed identity and mixed culture and mixed race is hard to absorb as someone who's non-binary, because it also comes into the play of like, okay, so will people understand me? Will people choose to ignore that? Will people see me as one thing and then just put labels and identities and beliefs into that, what they see? And so sometimes it's hard for me, like what B was saying with expression, because no matter how much I try or know how much I want to be who I want to be, I know that my perception is going to be perceived in a completely different way. And who I see and who I am and what I look like is completely different than what people tell me I am. So it definitely gets really hard. But I think what you said, B, about, you know, having the confidence and someone who's also low income, it's like, okay, I know confidently I can wear this and I know confidently I believe in myself, and kind of going beyond other people and how they don't know or they're misinformed or they don't believe you is like the challenge I always struggle with. It's like, I want to wear this, but I know it's going to be hard, but I'll do it anyway.
Yeah. Any thoughts you'd like to add, eBug, as we wrap up?
I don't think I have anything to add for this section, but I want to say thank you for you all for sharing. Yeah.
I feel that in general, not just for this question. Thank you all for sharing bits and pieces of yourself with us and with chat today. You know, there's some inherent level of vulnerability with sharing parts of your identity with an unknown audience. So I really do appreciate you all for coming here and opening up this conversation for potential community members to feel less lost, maybe less alone, and maybe validated in some of their experiences they might be having. And yeah, let me do a little exclamation point guests command in the chat as we wrap up. If you enjoyed what you saw today, if you liked getting to know each and every one of these wonderful humans, they all curate their own spaces and communities online to varying degrees, so you are more than welcome to check out what they're doing in their own spaces if you would like. And we are going to wrap up and find a lovely It Gets Better ambassador to raid. So if y'all would like to come along for the raid, you are more than welcome. Toasty. I'm crying. That's our little It Gets Better raid message. If you would like to grab it, it is like universal emotes, so anybody should be able to come if you'd like. Alright, we're gonna go raid the iconic Jupy, another gender non-conforming, non-binary human. And get to support them today, so that's super rad. Again, thank you all for hanging out with us. Thank you to all of our panelists for being here today. And I will see you all for my next ambassador stream next month. Bye, friends. All right, y'all are